I am actually very honored to present Professor Dr. Amara Renate Eckert from Germany, and the president of ISPPM, and she got lots of hats and different titles, and of course also is my very, very best friend, I must say. Actually, also is my president. So I always call her my president. This is your time now. So Amara, welcome. And thank you for accepting our invitation. So honored to be with you tonight.
Thank you for the invitation. Thanks for joining at this time. It's not so easy to join at the exact time where we make it live. I think most of the people will see it later when it's online. Yeah.
Can we start actually who you are, first of all, and then when we are going to warm up a little bit, then we can go back to your background a little bit, your childhood baby. But first, who are you, Amara, right now?
I thought this is the end of the interview.
Then it is the end of the interview. It's done.
Yeah, so this is a difficult question. So I start with a profession. So
yes.
I'm a professor of psychomotricity. I'm teaching body psychotherapy. I'm teaching prenatal psychology. I'm teaching social work. And to be honest, I need to say I was teaching it mainly. And I'm retired since 2017. And since that time, I do what I couldn't do during my work in Germany. I travel and I work in different countries. So I welcome my Romanian colleagues here, and where we first started working in Eastern Europe, that was Romania, and Turkey. And then I went on in Bulgaria. So that's to say that briefly. That's a professional thing. And the other thing, you should discover. Maybe I'm the one who goes for discovery to go with that. Your question again. And so let's say research, and going for research all my life, inner and outer research, and to learn. That's most parts of my life.
Thank you. I think it's a very good start, but are you ready to go back?
Of course.
Thank you. So shall we start, Amara? What was the space and what was the cultural context in which you were conceived? You know, when was it and what was going on at that time?
It was 1951, and it was a period after war, after the Second World War in Germany, and that was a really tough period. Yeah, and if you allow me, I will give you an impression through pictures.
Please do.
So this, here you can, this is my mother and me. And you may have so this is a very old picture, and you may have an impression of that time by the color, by the faces, by the dress. It was a time when people were poor, and so that was the time I was conceived. How to say?
Well, when you mention about the poorness, because my question also was related with what is the challenges? It could be like a challenges, the hard times, and maybe opportunities as well. So how did you feel that?
So to go back, I just remember a very lonely time. I remember people were busy. Everyone was busy with surviving. Everyone was busy with getting at least what you need to survive. And my family, both of my family came from a middle class, and they lost nearly everything in war. So they had to start from the beginning. And so to come back to go directly to the topic of the prenatal, my mother told me that I was most wanted by my father, and she had to agree. So that was the time. And she adopted. And at the same time, she was busy with my grandmother who was sick. She had to go she had to care for my grandmother who lived in the same house. And she had to care for the house and the garden. And I was there still. And of course, women of that time had to care for their husbands. And the role of my mother also was she didn't learn anything for on job because she was supposed to have a good marriage before war. That was what the parents thought. That was the time. And after war, everything was different. And later on, she had to learn a job. So that was somehow the scenario. But the scenario was in a way, what to say, it was a bit on the psychological level. I want to say something about that time. It was still that depression time in Germany. And it was still the influence of the book of Johanna Hara, which was published in the Hitler area. It was a guide for mothers to raise children. The mother and her first child, it was named. And in this book, you had very strict rules to raise children. And one thing which also happened to me was that feed your children only every 4 hours and don't feed them at night. So that was the rule. And that means if you are a child, forget about your needs. And in a way, that means for the child freezing and splitting off the needs. And it means loneliness, darkness, remembering of loneliness and darkness at night. And later on, when I worked on this period of time, I had these pictures. So I could refer to this. I speak about the pictures I had, and pictures also I experienced when I work with clients about this deep loneliness or feeling abandoned. When you are alone in your room, nobody is there. And coming to the prenatal time, there was no prenatal time on the psychological level that time. There was just a child growing, and it should be healthy. That's it. And there was no talking to the child. There was no bonding and things like this. And there was no word like bonding. That was not included in the Hitler's upbringing. So the main goal of that upbringing in that book I mentioned was make the kids functioning. The kids should not feel their needs, they should function. And because they have to be good citizens later on, and you had to guide them. You have to guide them. They have to obey. And this was the time many kids were raised like this. And you can imagine that we all have more or less some trauma, some bonding trauma. There are books about it in Germany. So Sabine Bode did research on that and wrote about that. about the past war area time, I mean, and yeah, the pregnancy, there was not so much research on pregnancy. I think Ludwig Janus does a bit of research on pregnancy that time, but I was not born in war, so I didn't have this war imprint, especially. But that after war imprint was like a depression, Great Depression in Germany. Nobody had any trust in himself, so nobody trusted himself. The people lived with that consciousness of, we are the losers, we have to be guilty, and they try not to be guilty, to split that off. But all the time the family came together, the war was on the table. So, and the happenings in war was on the table, and the kids were sent out, not to listen. But of course, they got the message, and they got the essence. They didn't need to listen to so much words. And so, and on the outside, we had no central heating, and we had no bathroom and all that kind of stuff, of course. So this everything at the beginning. And we had small flats, and yeah.
Well, when you said, like, you were, I mean, it was like loneliness, darkness, lack of trust, it came to my ear. Thank you for sharing. I think it's very important. What I was thinking, you said, there was no word for the kids. They were not listened. Nobody asked how they felt. I just wanted to ask you, if you were given a word, if you were asked as a kid in that time, what would you like to tell us, little Amara?
Please get me out of here.
Yeah, I do understand. Thank you. And when you keep breathing, huh? when you share this, I'm also feeling about your grandmother, because actually you mentioned also about it. Do you also have her photo, maybe, if you want to share with us? Because I think it is also important, because of the transgenerational. This is your mom and you, and
so this is these are my grandparents, and this is my mom in the kinder car. So here you can see my grandpa, who was also waiting for me, and I still remember him, even if he was dying very early. I remember his hands on my mother's belly. It's when I worked with the prenatal topics, I remembered his hands on my mother's belly, and I still remember his power. And when I connect to him, I still connect to his power. It's amazing. So I think there is something I inherited from him. And I think it's about intuition, and it's about healing power. So that's him. And the mother, you can see in this generation again, the mother had my grandmother had not a pleasant, had a bad, let's say, difficult pregnancy. She had a lot of pain in her kidneys, and she couldn't get medicine. But he had bad kidney contracts, I think it's named. So it was really hard for her. And it's interesting that my mother did not eat well for around 2 years. She only drank the mother's breast. And so my grandmother was constantly fighting with my mother to eat. And my mother, still when she was older, she was very tricky to play eating, but not to eat. So she, in a way, she Unconsciously for me, she was saying, I don't want your food. So, and or maybe your food, I want your bonding, but I don't want you to eat. I don't want to do what you want. Let's say it like this. And still that area, that was between the First and the Second World War, that was 23. It was a really tough time. So the 20s were, in Germany, were quite good in a way. But the upbringing of the children, it was not very pleasant. And so this on the psychological side, let's say. Yeah, so I will come back, right?
Sure, sure. Because actually I saw the smile from your grandfather. I just love it. Yeah. I think it's a lovely combination, you know, the smile, but at the same time, lots of suffer and trying to survive.
Yeah, yeah. Until my mother, till she died with 95, and she still she knew about her trauma, but she didn't want to connect, and she consciously said, "Stop that conversation. It's over." And that was what that generation said. That was mostly the sentence of that generation. And when I started...
Stop this conversation, and could you please repeat it?
This is over, she told me.
This is over.
So my childhood is over, and the war is over. And even when my daughter later on discovered that she worked in war close to a concentration camp, she stopped the pictures and she stopped the conversation. And it was in a way unconsciously. It was not conscious. It was amazing for me. It was really, really strong, this experience and this unconsciousness with which though the people, the parents and the grandparents acted. And she was a lot afraid when I started my prenatal journey, she was actually against my self-discovery, to say that. Every time I went to a training, to the body psychotherapy training, or when I went to the Gestalt therapy training in the beginning, and then she asked me, "Oh, come on, stop this. This is not useful. What do you get out of this? This is bullshit." And when I started with the prenatal, she always asked me, "What is this? What is this? What did you discover?" And you cannot discover anything. And I was, at that time, I was just patient and smiling and not talking, and that was fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes I asked her questions about that time, but in a good mood and with a cup of tea and in a joyful way. And then sometimes she talked about things I think she didn't realize what she said. And so in these last years before her death, she actually told me that she did not want me. She didn't say that before.
Wow.
But that she gave birth to me because my father wanted me. And so she wanted to wait because she had too much work. She said, "I would have loved to get you later." But so it was, she always said this was the time.
Okay.
And this, we have to see things. And that's my work too. I never look at things without the context of the history, of the transgenerational, of the family, of the cultural, and that's part of the work. And by the way, that makes working in different countries so exciting and so interesting for me to working with the people. So thank you for those who are here. I discover the soul of the country, or that part of the soul of the country which I meet. So meeting with clients is just a meeting. It's a soul meeting, you know. And
yeah. I think it's beautiful because I heard your mother was saying before, when you try to explore more and more, there's no need to ask more. There's no need to explore or discover more. You mentioned, but then you discover the world. You get out and to discover and explore the world.
my mother said that there's no need
Yeah.
to explore more.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You do totally different. I mean, you maybe started to explore little, from your transgenerational part, but then when you said she stopped you, there is no need, my child, to explore anymore. And then, okay, then I go and explore more and more to the world.
Of course, I always did.
Wow. And I hear lots of things, but at the same time, I want you to hear from you directly. What were the best qualities, Amara, coming from your mother, especially? What do you think?
The best qualities for my mother is patience, lots of patience. And from my mother also later on, when I was, let's say what I was, so she, at least we had bonding. So she managed to bond in spite of all this difficult starts. And yes, bonding and intuition also.
Okay. And from your father? Maybe.
For my father, it's education. And so the focus on education and focus on go on with education and get the best out of you. And it's taking care for your existence, existential needs.
And the environment, maybe?
Fun?
What your environment, for instance, when you were grow up? What is the qualities, the best qualities you take from the environment you were inside?
You mean the school and
yeah, and also the area, or I mean whatever you perceive. Like you think about the things coming from the mother, the things coming from the father, and also the things coming from the environment. Of course, to add your existence.
Learning how to deal with poverty.
It's quite understandable. Yeah.
So I do an example. There was a lot of ruins around my area, and we played in the ruins. We played with bricks. We discovered tunnels from the Second World War. And we found things from the Second World War. I think it was dangerous sometimes, but we did that. So we had an adventurous life this way. This is what, and to deal with this kind of poverty, when you are a kid, you can look at it as an adventure, as an adventure place. There were gardens with trees, and there were nothing. And we were playing hide and seek, and we were running all over the place for big areas with no houses in the middle of the city of Düsseldorf, where I grew up. And we grabbed food, we stole food, we stole whatever we found on the trees, and tried not to be found. And so this was, in that way, I had a really adventure. I discovered joy, adventure, and moving around. And we had gangs, so we were moving around in gangs. We were fighting with each other. So the girls were fighting against the boys, and so we we tried to not to get caught and to get roped and put on the tree, roped on the tree like Indians, you know. We played all that in reality, not on Facebook or somewhere, not on the net, but in reality we did that.
So lots of like a body work kind of, you know, you use the real bodies and, you know, the energy and the playfulness.
Let's say it was an adventurous experience. You can pay for it a lot of money today if you will have something like that. But
it is true.
That was real. And to survive with simple food, but that was not simple food for us that time. It was just good food. It was just what we got. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking about, you know, little stories about your childhood, but I wonder if you have any kind of like significant story you would like to share with us. Like, and then, you know, the story may be related with who you became now today.
Yeah. So my coping strategy was movement. And so my mother, she bought for me, when she had a job and money later on, she bought things to move. So this roller skates later, and she bought a roller for me. And so with my friends from school, we started moving, and we started to go to the next small city by roller skates and by roller. So we had no bikes at that time; they were too expensive. And that, as much as we could, we were doing this. And then I got a swing in the apartment, and all the time, all my free time, I was on that swing. And I even put myself comfortable on that swing, and I started to do homework on that swing.
Wow.
Swinging and doing things. And then there was something to, I don't know the name now, something to put in, and you could hang over. And then I was hanging my head down and swinging like this and singing. I remember this. And so this was moving and experiencing and playing. That was the joy of my time, of that time. And coping with movement, all the time after movement, I was in the life I wanted. I told you in the beginning, get me out of here. And this coping got me out of that life, out of that depression, out of that trauma of that time. And feeling myself, feeling joy, I felt alive. And then later on, I started dancing in our flat, and I was allowed to do that. That was a good thing. So I put on classic music, and I started dancing all over the place. And I started. I found creative ways of dancing, and I used scarves, and I used the floor, and I used athletic movements, everything. So this, and later on, you know, my job, I started with, I had few job wishes. So according to my resources from the childhood, there was another resource that was nature. So as much as possible, I tried to go with my roller skates to nature. And when father went out to the next city, I went with him to go to see green grass and nature. And so I wanted to be a farmer. I wanted to be someone in the forest guard, or I wanted to be a psychologist. So these were my wishes. And
the farmer, forest guard, and the psychologist, right?
Yes, and at the end, I became a psychomotor therapist.
Very good combination, Amara.
That's
Wow.
it. Combination.
Wow.
There was no job like psychomotor therapist that time, so I created it. And you ask for special things, so being creative in the environment with those things which are possible, that is a great resource too. That's what I learned, and so when I didn't study psychology too much, I was more interested in special education then. Psychology study was boring for me actually, and I decided to do a PhD and to do training on psychotherapy instead of going all through that study again, that psychological study. So I had this diploma in special education, social work, and sports. That was that time, and then I wrote my thesis about psychomotricity with people with handicapped kids. So I got it together. At that time, I still thought movement is the key. In a way, I knew it's not the key, but I didn't know how. I didn't find words to describe what it is, what I want to what I'm doing. I didn't have the words for what I'm doing, and I was not there where I wanted to go. I wanted to discover something unspoken, something, some pre-verbal stuff. And that time there were no words for it. So we have a lot of words to describe all kinds of emotional and sensual and body states, but that time there were no words. So I went on discovering, and then I found out when I was my first job was in school after the study, and my second job was at university in Cologne, and then I had the possibility to do research.
Okay. Well, meantime, I can hear lots of inspirations, or inspirators, let's say. It could be like people, or maybe non-human.
In the meantime,
well, can you tell me what is your, let's say, main inspirators?
people.
What was? People. It could be people, Amara. It could be non-human, or I don't know. Maybe you mentioned about your nature or forest, but we would like to learn what was your main inspirators.
So let's go back to, so the main thing was a movement.
Yeah.
To see what kept me healthy that time, to get out of trauma. And the other thing were being together with friends, so social connection. And later on I discovered that the main thing is to feel myself.
To feel yourself.
Feel myself, yeah. And but then there was a long time there was nothing else. So then I had to study. There was nothing else. I had my peer group and what I said. And the school was so-so. So actually it was awful, but there were also some good things. In school I learned how to survive this environment, and I learned that I always ask myself, how could you do that better? How could you do a human school and not the technocratical school or that type of school we had that time? But all together there were good connections in a way. But there was nothing that let's say the life starts in university, when I had my first friends, my first relationships, and going through all that stuff. You go in the first relationships with all this disappointment and that joy, and not knowing why that happens to you as it happens. And let's say the environment was inspiration to get along with the environment, and that was quite usual use. So having peer groups, going dancing together, having a hard time at home, coming when I came late, and having a lot of struggle at home when my boyfriend came on Sunday with an unwashed car and things like this. When he had when he had just a pullover and not a jacket, my father threw him out. Things like struggle like this we had. So there's all that normal stuff that time.
Right. It was the university time.
This is the end of school. Let's say the end of school. And again, now I remember when you asked me, there was something. I went with groups of people of my age to vacation, and what we did there is I had a few people. We escaped in the night. We jumped out of the window of the hostel, and then we did a night walk. And it was not about it was a bit erotical, yes, but only a bit. But it was on adventure. So we did not know where we went. We didn't know the direction, but somehow we came back in the morning to breakfast. And so we were sitting at the breakfast table, just smiling. Nobody was missing us. And so that was somehow the joy of not obeying, let's say like this. Because obeying was a big topic in my childhood, to obey. So that's one.
And again, it was like a adventure. Again, it was a moment. Again, it was discover. And again, being with friends. Isn't it?
Was, and let's add that word. It was about autonomy. And
here we go.
Great urge on autonomy. As you know that, I do it my way.
And I do it my way.
It's not always easy for people to swallow that, but I do.
Because you're doing so nicely and so smoothly, so nobody can resist.
Sometimes, I tell you, sometimes it's not easy for people to work with me. I know that. But in a way, you're right. When they understood that in the end, it's working, it's fine.
So maybe slowly, we can come to your very early professional life, let's say. You finish your university, did you say psychology, social work, and the
psychology, sociology, social work and special education and sports. So I studied double. I studied
double major.
Double for a teacher exam and for the diploma. And so I did 2 exams at the one close after the other.
Okay, well, let's say, I don't know if you want to share from the university time, let's coming towards to your very early professional or maybe research times. I don't know, during the university or after the university, during your BA, or I don't know which times. What would you like to share about your very early professional times?
For the university time, I can say my private life at that time was the most important.
Okay.
To get out of home, to live on my own. At least it was a time of finding who am I? The question you asked me in the beginning. I discovered, and that was hard for me to discover, I didn't know. in university, I discovered I did not know who I am. So I found myself to cover my girlfriend and to behave like her, to get into her role and to behave like her and to try out how is this to be her. And then I went to the role of another girlfriend to try out how does it feel to be like her. But deep down, it was really, really painful to discover it. And but university didn't help me in that way. University helped me to develop mentally and scientifically. That was a good time for this. And I met some good people. But coming out of university, I found myself being more unable to work in a practical environment than I thought before. So I found myself just mentally fit and socially unable to have some confidence to for instance, my first job was in school to teach a class. And that was again shocking me. And I found myself repeating the behavior of parents and of my aunt who was living with us. And that was another shock. And so at that time, people came to me and asked me to do a not speech therapy, the Rogers therapy, non-directive therapy. And my intuition told me immediately go in, and I went in, and that was my savior at that time. And that was the first time I discovered that the journey has to go inwards. That's a discovery, and that the adventure journey, let's say, has to go inwards.
That was actually, thank you for telling this, because my question was going to be like this. How did, you talk about this initial understanding about yourself and trying to discover who you are. But then this initial understanding developed and mature later on somehow. So I think you were just talking about this. What happened then?
So let's say in a way I had some inheritance from my grandpa and my mother. And there is still also memory in my childhood where I had that. So I always had intuition about my surrounding. And I had I think I discovered I discovered that what I teach today, I discovered that when I was 2 years old or something. So
wow.
I discovered to check my surrounding and to feel my surrounding and be in resonance with my surrounding. And as a child, I did that to feel safe.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be right. And I lost that intuition when I was in school, and when I was in university, I lost it completely. I forgot it completely, and then I rediscovered it in therapy. Yeah.
Okay. And well, I wonder actually, as I understand, during the university time and after the university, you decided to actually have a journey inwards, toward your inside. And I wonder actually, any other important people during that time did you maybe work with, or maybe to grow together, to explore together?
So the books I were with, I had really good people, beautiful people.
Yeah.
But my first teacher, who deserves that name, appeared in that time. It was in the training, after the Rogers training, I did Gestalt training, and that was Michael Wayne. He was a Canadian art therapist and Gestalt therapist. And that was a turnaround in my life, meeting him, because he taught me, without saying that, he taught me how to work with love.
Oh.
And he taught me how to work with love for people. Because, and a very important thing was, I was fighting a lot. Actually, I didn't mention that, but I was always fighting. I was always doing nasty things and fighting in my childhood, and people had a hard time with me sometimes. And tried to
yeah. Actually, you mentioned about being in the gang, or also fighting against. Is that what you meant, or something different?
Giving trouble to my parents, giving trouble to my teachers, giving trouble to whatever. And so I gave some trouble to him, to my trainer, and he still loved me.
Oops.
And he was containing and loving. And that was the first time I experienced that the attitude of containing. That was a 90-degree turn in my life. And immediately I experienced, okay, that's it. That could be the way. So he was a very important initial flame, let's say like this. He allowed me to didn't fight, and he didn't go for discipline or whatever, or saying words. So he was just there, and okay, Amara, that's you.
And I accept you.
Now it's time to look at this one. I still have the symbols in the back. So I still use that kind of playful, but I use it playfully, I use it professionally, and at the same time authentically. So the nasty child, and it's I was it, and it's an alive child, and it's a powerful and an autonomous child, and it's a child we need to discover and we need to have contact with. Actually, with a joyful child and the playful child. So this became my job.
Wow. And I can see she was also listening.
There's another one, you see?
Okay. Yeah.
This is the dragon.
Is the dragon also listening?
The dragon is also listening, yes. Dragon is has many symbolic quotations, so you can use him.
Yeah. And we were talking about important people. Is there anybody else you would like to mention? I don't want to miss it.
At that
we
time,
can continue.
At that time, when that was the early professional time, it was the most important man I met. Teacher, let's say teacher, the first teacher, I always say, in my life. And later on, there were books, the emancipation, the women's emancipation literature, or the tribal books from Liedloff, and to read about women and body and this whole movement that was encouraging my autonomy. And with this teacher, I started learning to contain myself. And this was the most important thing. And there were other teachers. Yes, there was this, the psychomotor teacher, the founder in Germany, which was Eckert, meeting the people around psychomotricity. So these were my people that time too. Joyful people, and people who like to play, people who like to be experiential, and people who work with resources still. And then now when we go to the 18th, that was my later, this professional time, my daughter, my husband I'm together with now. Actually, my partner's also the father of my daughter. It was also, so there were many important people I met, but I cannot name all, but let's say my family today. So actually my husband, I started working with him the moment I met him, I started working with him. It's amazing. We were together for 3 weeks, and then we had the first body psychotherapeutic workshop, and it worked.
Oh, with your husband together?
So that was, but that was the end of the 18th, and this was still my time at University Cologne. And in this time, I started to work with kids. And now I would like to dive deeper into not to the facts, but to the essential stuff I discovered in my work. If you shall we go there?
Yeah, please, because I was going to ask you actually, you know, what is your main findings, you know, after so many years? You could also share about your lovely photos right now, if you like.
Yeah. So this the things developed in this way. Yeah, I will share. What you can see here, this is I don't have the pictures of that university time in Cologne, but I put some others here. So this is my professional work with adults in the psychomotor area. So this you see this is a birth symbolic. This is prenatal symbolic of being held, and you can see this as a symbolization for the uterus, or for the ovary and the egg being in between. And so there are many things to many prenatal symbols. And this, of course, you can see as a symbolization of safety. And so this is a moving stuff part here of also close to uterus, this experience. And here you can picture just a picture when I started to go to other countries. I started to go to Korea. This was a later picture. I think this was 2014, but I started to go there in the early
especially actually in the middle the picture, you know, with the ropes and everything, and in the social context, it reminds me, you know, you're swinging and with the kids together and play together, all the ropes and everything. Yeah. Interesting, Amara.
Look at the faces of the people.
Yeah.
And they, so the magic of the psychomotor way of working with body issues in a deep way is that you go with joy, and that the joy takes you at the deepest point. So when you go with joy, you open up so much. And when you go when you go to mindfulness, when you work with joy and mindfulness, things come up. You don't expect, so things you don't expect come up this way. And but actually I learn to do what with which group. So in this way, this is resource building what we did here. We did not go to deeper topics. This is just resources for, it's a school in Istanbul. These are the teachers here you see. And yeah, I can show this picture because it's anyway in a movie of the multiple university. It's a project of multiple university picture. and you see the joy, and the people are energized again, and they are feel they don't feel on that they feel trust. So that my work was on developing trust. So to help the people to develop trust in themselves, to develop safety in themselves, and to go for autonomy and to together. So belonging on topic.
Is that what you mentioned also related the most important, lessons or learnings you gained? Is that
Yes.
like, the autonomy and the joyfulness?
Yeah. Joyful is things that comes by doing this. Maybe there are, I have just, this is more the teaching stuff. Here you see some here you see some typical teaching pictures from the university. And this is a Erasmus project, which was in the latest years. And this is ISPPM already, and these are these are typical university pictures. But now the pictures from the kids. Now that's what I developed or what I saw. So he works with this kind of movements, with this kind of game. And if you look at this, and all you need is to give people a space for and safety and space for experiencing, and to give them containment, and then things develop on its own accord. And you need to be in resonance, of course. That's part of safety, and that's part of holding and containing. And so the kids find their way on their own. And you see what this boy is symbolizing. And so giving the kids the way to create a good experience of their prenatal life, to how Carlton says it later, to repattern their prenatal experiences. That's another one. And then later on, I did but that was 2014 already. I did a research on prenatal, the meaning of prenatal play, or of play in kids, and I discovered all plays, all gaming in childhood are prenatal. And if you look at this, you easily see this. This is this was a yoga group, and after yoga there was playing, and see what they do. So they hide themselves and they cover themselves and they go under here and they build a house, and that they did everything on their own accord. So the moment the kids have a safe space and a containment, they start playing their story and what they need, and they go for their needs. And you only need to support those needs, to be present. Yeah, that's all. And again, so this was more the play with the body. They wanted to crawl. This was actually part of yoga, so yoga was playful with me. They were crawling around each other. Yeah. So
yeah, it's like, it seems there are lots of touching, like a body work and connect together, bond together, isn't it, Amara?
It is. It is bonding. Always with respect, and for everyone could choose their own way. That's always my concern, that everyone can choose his or her own way. And
autonomy again.
Autonomy, of course, self-regulation, autonomy. And I told you that was what I had to learn in my childhood, and what was not encouraged in my childhood. And so this work with the kids, now I do it with my youngest grandchild, but this work with the kids was always my concern. Here you can see a typical birth symbolization being between two mats and wanting to have it more, wanting to be more squeezed. And yeah, and look at the face.
It's like push, push.
Push, push. Yes, yes. And he enjoys to feel it, and he enjoys, that's it, playing it against, finding symbolization for your story, and to do it the way it feels good. Not to repeat the old stuff, but create a new story. And that's what kids do, and that's what I do with kids. So giving them possibilities to create to deal with the fear, to deal with aggressivity, anger, and to deal with isolation and loneliness, and find their own way to play a new story, to find a new story. And when this is, I often discovered when this was done, they were ready to go to learn in school. So the teachers were no longer complaining. But before that, they were occupied with that trauma, with that traumatic experience, and they couldn't do. So now some more, we are with the kids, some more pictures. This is a picture from the last training in Bulgaria. And again, the boy was looking for that situation and look at his body posture. And he wanted to be rolled. And the one who is rolling is his father. And he had a difficult pregnancy because of the illness of his bigger brother and all the worries the parents had because of the sickness of his bigger brother. Actually, this boy is an amazing boy, to say that. We have another picture here. That's a great, this is a typical psychomotor environment, you see, all the playing stuff. You see here, he wants to go out and he wants to be held. And so this is his situation in life. He wants to stay inside, and even inside him, and he wants to go out at the same time. And at that time I met, now he's older, but I think this was 2 years or even 1 year ago. He always had a transition object with him, which was a train going, you can say, from inner to outer, but a train who symbolizes to go from one part of life to another part. And he was very social, and but he always needed to go back and to go to him and to be with himself. And you could see that he was bothered by a lot of pictures, inner pictures. And in this environment, these pictures can come out and they can be expressed. And when they come out and when they are expressed, you can deal with those pictures. The same with psychotherapy and with body psychotherapy. You express what's bothering you, and then you can deal with it. And that is what kids do. But you don't talk to kids, you play, because that's their language.
Sure.
And that's another. You may ask me what kind of birth this is. Do you have an idea?
Let me see. Is it kind of a breech birth or something?
No, it's cesarean.
Oh my gosh.
Please help me out.
Wow.
So this is a very strong girl, which also had to deal with a difficult birth, which was caused by the treatment which the woman got. so the mother was not in the best hands, let's say, in her birth, and so there are still a lot of unsolved guilt and anger and around this topic, and the girl tries to play, and this is part of showing. This is so kids always show what they have experienced if you learn to see.
Mhm.
And then I think that's it with the kids. Yeah, so this is it with the work.
Okay, that's beautiful. So actually, Amara, is this because I wonder also if you can explain a little bit about psychomotricity, but I think it was all about what you do with the pictures and with to open a space for kids to share and to show. Is this what you do and what you call psychometricity, or would you like to share more about this?
It's about experiencing, playing, and that's it actually. So there is a lot of theory how you can use it. You can use it in an educational way. You can use it in a therapeutical way. You can use it for recreation. You can use it for just for fun, for sports. So it depends. But so the tools are very variable. But if you use it for therapeutic, in a therapeutic way and in the prenatal way, it needs some special education for therapists. It's not just fun. It's a fun with some depth. Let's say it like this. So as kids are.
Yeah.
And I also use it in body psychotherapy. I don't show pictures of body psychotherapy. You know why? That's I never take pictures in my courses, of course not. And so I use it in body psychotherapy to energize and to have not to. I hate this. Let's how to say this kind of therapy with all that always gives you the feeling life is heavy. Life is needs to be solved. Life needs to be worked on. Life needs to be whatever, and you need to talk, and you need to look for reasons,
solutions, maybe,
solutions, reasons, whatever. And I work the way that solutions come on it by themselves. They appear in the people I work with. And my work is to encourage people and to contain and to be with people in that way that the solution can be found in them, that they can find their solutions.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
So people who are here might, some people might say how it works. It works. Sometimes I also say what I feel, what I think I would do, but it's not that the client should do it. I'm far away from telling people what to do. Let's say it like this. And now you have the thing to my childhood, the obeying stuff that refers to that experience and to autonomy, to the need of autonomy, which I discover that it's a life topic for everyone. Of course it is. It's not my discovery, it's psychology, you know that.
Yeah, it is true. But what I'm thinking actually during I listen to you, of course it's, the degrees, university, academical knowledge is coming from outside. And then, once in your life you said, oh, okay, I need to discover myself inside, inwards. So it seems and it sounds, it's more mindfulness, it's more here and now, it's more kind of meditation. I'm using this kind of popular words on
Yes.
purpose, but would you like to also share about this? Because it feels there is also this kind of smell in your life. Is that true?
Of course, that was the other thing, discovering who am I. When I was in Gestalt therapy, I had a trainer who was a meditator and who was doing meditation with us. And there were other people doing meditation, and it was very strange for me. And but then I joined, and that was active meditation. It was the Osho style meditation, and it was Zen meditation both, and it was yoga. And when I joined, I found something in that, and then I started to read about meditation. And then that was the next 180-degree turnaround in my life. I found out that therapy is just a start, and containing is just a start, and this is the next. And so that was a time when my job after 10 years at Cologne University stopped. I could have extended, but I didn't want anymore. I wanted to go out. I had an offer of a professorship at that time. I was 35, so it was really early time to get that. And but I didn't want. I felt now getting a professor is like to be buried. So, and life is just in front of me, so I want to live. And not to be in an institution, and to be, I would have felt like encaged. And so I stopped university, and I went, at that time I have already met my husband, who was on the same way like me, professionally and on the same way inside. We were actually on the same track, in outer and inner. And so we went for meditation, and what I did was, before I met him already, I was engaged in meditation, and I was for the Satyananda yoga movement, yoga meditation. That's a special school. It's a Bihar school of yoga. That's a meditation school, actually. It's very strong and a bit tough, but it was good for me at that time. And I had a good German teacher, and I had a good Australian teacher when I went to do that in Australia. And I took my daughter with me. So yeah, and then with my husband, I went to India, and we did meditation there. And then later on became interested in meditation therapy, meditative therapies, and we did a lot of trainings in meditative therapy. And there was a person like Roberta de Long-Miller, and she is creating psychic massage. She was a great teacher for me. She taught me how to work with resonance on the body, on people. The 6 weeks training with her, each day training. And that was awesome. And then I went into the Gabrielle Sinclair and Michael Plesse. They created the orgodynamic body psychotherapy, which included meditation a lot, meditation and mindfulness. They were ahead of their time when we went there. We went there both. And I worked 8 years with those people, and that also was a strong impact. And from that time on, my work, my psychomotricity work, and this body psychotherapy and the mindfulness, this all melted. And, that was my intention for all my life. What I learned to let it come together, to be integrated. I didn't want to change jobs. People asked me that time, do you want to get a body psychotherapist? And I said, no, I'm a university teacher and I'm integrating it there. And so this is, I can see it as a line to my life, to integrate things inside and then bring it outside and create it and integrate it outside. So that's how I work, from inside to outside, and that's how I developed it. Yeah. So that means the behavior therapy approach was not actually mine.
It doesn't look like.
I'm not against, but it didn't work for me.
Sure.
So, and you know, my first research was also on movement and speech in kids. And I need to say, when you ask me from whom I learned, after I met all those teachers, the most I learned from the people I work with. Let's say this, people I work with, the people I live with. That's my learning. And with the kids, working with the kids, I learned everything. Because I was looking for people to talk to teach me about how to work with kids, and I couldn't find what I wanted to know. I found some blah blah, you know what you find in psychology, but I didn't found the essence. But the kids taught me. The pictures you saw it. What I told you, that was taught to me by the kids.
Yeah.
So I needed to be available, open to learn. And now I come back to my first real teacher. That from that moment on, I started that journey, being open to learn from my clients, let's say, from the people I live with, I work with.
Wow.
And that was most important. And working with speech and language and movement means working with the nonverbal. And when I did my PhD on that topic, I discovered I'm working with the nonverbal. And there was another important discovery in my PhD. I did an empirical statistical PhD, a typical one. And the outcome was awful for me. There were some significant things which, and I didn't see something else. I saw something else. And the results were not what I saw in the kids. And that was the turning point, getting away from the empirical statistical research, qualitative research, and to the observation. And later on, I discovered it in psychoanalytic research. So psychoanalytic science works this way. So I discovered that I work with the nonverbal, and the nonverbal, later on, I discovered that is working with unconsciousness and with the implicit body memory and the feelings. And I discovered that I always work with a system around. And so I came to systemic theory, to systemic family therapy, and to psychoanalysis. And I always had colleagues who work with psychoanalysis. It was nice to see that in my life. One of the first colleagues was a psychoanalyst, and I had always people who were fighting against me. So I had two learning parts, the fighting part and the supporting part. Mostly I had that. And so I tell you, maybe if it's time, we are
Yeah, I'm just waiting if you want to add something about your professional findings, and then I will
I would
continue few questions more.
I would like to tell about a situation which was significant for me. So I worked with mothers and kids in a group and in the psychomotor environment. And one of the kids wanted to be in the sports hall. I mostly worked in that sports hall that time. I don't know the name. It was like this, and you can put it off and you can climb in. And actually, it was for jumping, but you can open it and you can go in. A wooden box. And the kid went into that wooden box. And I thought, no, well, what to do with the kid? The kid should move and should play. And I was sitting close to the box, and then the kid started talking to me in the way, "Are you still there?" And I said, "Yes." And the kid was playing in the box, talking with himself, and then again asking me, "Are you there?" I said, "Yes." And so it went on for 1 hour.
Wow.
And, I talked about patience in the beginning. And that I was learning that. And after 1 hour, I asked myself, Amara, what is this? What was this? I hope nobody saw this or will ask me what I did. And when the time was over, the kid, I offered the kid I always had some nuts with me, some resins to if you want something to eat. And he said yes. And I gave him something to eat. And after that, he said that he wanted to come out. So he came out. So he was in the box in the dark for 1 hour playing with a small car and with himself. And then he was really happy. His mother was quite calm, and his mother said, by the way, he's afraid of the dark. This was the first time he was not afraid. At that time, I understood that this child chose a situation in his own way, what he wanted to learn at that time. And that the secret of not being afraid was a bonding. And I learned that whatever you experience, it's about bonding. Of course, you know the symbol of the uterus in the box, and I had that idea at that time too. Being there and being bonded, and so it can happen whatever happens if you are bonded. It's not that dangerous. You can cope with fear. So that was a learning in the 80s from a kid. That's one example how I learned.
It's a big learning, actually, you know.
It is. You can't find it. That time you couldn't find it in a book. Now you can.
Well, I wonder actually, Amara, please feel free if you want to add some things, if you remember anything. But I wonder, I'm going to ask you a very funny question, I must say. Please tell me, what would life be like if you were not born, Amara? If you were not born. If you were not born, what would life to be?
That's up to you to say that.
I wonder, is there actually anything you would like to change when you could go back, let's say? Anything?
Go back where?
Yeah, go back to the past.
I could only go back to the past concerning the last years or something. Everything else, no, there's no need for change, because It was learning.
Mm.
And I'm really grateful for that learning, really. I'm really grateful also for that hard learning, for that hard way of learning.
Thank you. Mm. And maybe from this point, what is the most important messages you would like to share with us, with the young generation, with the people are watching you now, or the people are going to watch you? Could be parents, could be professionals.
Shall I show my picture?
Please go on. Please. Yeah.
You can read.
Yeah, but we would like to hear from your voice.
So, what I would say to you, go on learning, but go on your way. That's most impossible. And if this way is not learning, it's not learning. It's something else. So the most important thing is for others, find the trust in yourself to go your way. That's the most, whatever this means. Whatever that means.
Oh, thank you so much. And is there anything before we're gonna end? Is there anything else you would like to add? You would like to share? Anything I missed from your photos you would like to share, or? This is now your time to end this.
I know.
Yeah, you always give space and time for kids, Amara, and now this is your time and your space.
To be honest, I never know. That can't say. Yeah, how to say. I think I have said everything. Just trust. I can say trust yourself. And when I mean self, I don't mean your mind. I mean your true self. That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All your sharings. I think it was coming from your heart, from your soul, and from your past. And if you let me, I also want to thank you and thank your parents and your grandparents and your generations and your daughter.
Yes.
And now I know you got also granddaughter. So I really appreciate all of them. Thank you.